Look at that. The official visits are only getting started today, and Pitt's already got a commitment. How about that, huh? Hooray! Commitments are coming in. Oh, the fireworks. I wanted the balloons. Why did I get fireworks when I wanted balloons? Maybe if I hold up the peace sign. Well, I get some balloons there. There we go. Commitments are already coming in. Or one commitment is already in, even though the official visit weekend starts today. Of course, the commitment was a commitment that came in yesterday, and it was a commitment from last weekend. It was a kid who visited last weekend. But nevertheless, it's good recruiting news, and hey, you take whatever you can get when it comes to good recruiting news, right? So Pitt landed a commitment, bumping up their recruiting class to 13 recruits in the class of 2025. We're talking about who the new commitment is and what's coming to town this weekend, who's coming to town this weekend, what this weekend's official visits look like. The visits start today. The recruits will arrive today. They'll be here through Saturday. Who's coming to town? Who could Pitt land? What is this visit weekend looking like for the Panthers? Let's talk about it here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Thursday. It's the Morning Pitt. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. That's what you find at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all your Pitt sports needs. And, of course, message boards where you can talk to other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are hanging out on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. You want to be there, too, so go check it out. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all of the Pitt sports coverage you can possibly handle. And then our YouTube channel right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's where we do all of our Pitt video content. We have our daily morning Pitt videos like this one that you're watching right here, our weekly live show like the one we did last night. And that was just, when I say we, that was the royal we, the editorial we, because it was just me. Jim's on vacation this week, so he wasn't part of it. Although it was kind of we. It was all of us together, right? I was doing my thing, but you guys were all involved in the chat and getting part of, being part of the conversation and the discussion anyway. So it was a we. We were all together last night for the live show. It's a lot of fun. I'm glad to appreciate everybody who tuned in. I hope I didn't just mute myself. I hope I haven't been muted this whole time. I don't think I've been muted this whole time. Boy, it's going to be funny when I go back and check after this just to make sure that I didn't mute myself for the entire opening 2 minutes of this video, 3 minutes of this video. If I did, well, that's going to make me really mad. But I'm not going to check, C'est la vie, say the old folks, right? Goes to show you never can tell. What was I talking about? Live show last night. Oh, if you want to make sure you don't miss any of our Pitt recruiting coverage, or you don't miss any of our Pitt video coverage, particularly as it relates to recruiting, the way to do it is to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com is the place where we put all of our Pitt video content. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of it, subscribe to the channel. Subscribe button's right down there. Click that thing, and you will be a part of the group, and we appreciate everybody who is. All right. A new commitment for Pitt. Let's start there. Announcement came yesterday. Shawn Lee, the athlete from Harrisburg, committed. Lee visited Pitt over the weekend, last weekend. He's a 6'1", 180-pound defensive back prospect. Took an official visit to Iowa State first and then came to Pitt this past weekend. And, Lee just might be the best overall athlete in the state of Pennsylvania, at least for the 2025 recruiting class. I'm bringing up his stats from last season because it's downright ridiculous of what Shawn Lee did for Harrisburg last year. You go over their player stats. I'm looking at Max Preps right now as we do this. Shawn Lee threw for 2,256 yards, 26 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He also rushed for 1,451 yards and 19 touchdowns. So just between the throwing and the rushing, that's 45 touchdowns right there and close to 4,000 yards, about 3,700 yards of total offense. He also caught a pass for 14 yards, just to throw a little bit more in there. He had one fumble that he lost during the season. In terms of all-purpose yards, he had 1,500. and 37 all-purpose yards. It's the 1,451 rushing yards, 14 receiving yards, and then 72 yards on interception returns. In terms of total yards, which includes his passing output, it's total offense, basically his rush, his passing, and his receiving, comes out to 3,721 yards. Nobody else on the team is really even close to that for Harrisburg last year. When you go into the defensive side of the thing, he had 47 tackles. Playing defensive back, no sacks. Obviously, you wouldn't expect him to get that, but he did have 4 interceptions, had 72 return yards on those interceptions. He also broke up 7 passes, and I just wanted to bring up the scoring real quick. He was responsible for the 19 rushing touchdowns. And 8 2-point conversions. So 8.7 points per game. As the quarterback, not getting credit for his passing touchdowns, still was responsible for almost 9 points per game, which was a team high total. He scored more touchdowns than anyone else on his team, 19. The next most was 16. And also had 4 2-point conversions, which was more than anybody else on his team. Shawn Lee was a do-everything athlete for Harrisburg this past year. He was an exceptional player, and like I say, probably one of the best athletes in the state, and now he's coming to Pitt. He's coming to Pitt to play defensive back. He's coming to Pitt to play corner. He's excited about playing for Archie Collins, and he's excited about just being a part of the Pitt defensive backfield, with all the guys they've sent to the pros. I was just looking at this the other day that Pitt has had 5 cornerbacks drafted under Pat Narduzzi, in addition to 4 safeties. So, the defensive backfield obviously has had a lot of success going to the NFL since Narduzzi arrived at Pitt in 2015. And that was all appealing to Shawn Lee. Inevitably, in the message board thread about Shawn Lee committing, there was somebody who said, "Oh boy, if Penn State comes calling, watch out." Well, sure, yeah, okay. You could probably say that about just about any recruit in Pennsylvania. At least, anybody east of Johnstown, that if Penn State comes calling, watch out. And a lot of guys west of Johnstown too, for that matter. But what matters is Penn State's not after him right now. What matters is Shawn Lee feels like Pitt's his best option right now. And what matters is Shawn Lee's committed to Pitt. And I think they got a really, really good athlete to put in the defensive backfield. So that brings the recruiting class up to 13. That's their second defensive back in this class. They have Lee, who's a corner, and they have Elijah Dotson, who's a safety. Dotson's going to take his official visit this weekend, but he's already committed. He committed in the spring. So they've got 2 defensive backs. I wouldn't be surprised if they take 1 more corner and 1 more safety. Maybe they take just 1 more guy, because at some point, you don't always want to take like 5 defensive backs. But look, we know this staff likes to load up on DBs. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them take 4 in this class again, particularly if it's 1 more corner and 1 more safety. It's a nice, even way to do it. You get 2 of each, and you close the book right there. Now, they've got some options at defensive back. There's one who's visiting this weekend. There's one who visited last weekend. They've got some guys out there that they've sort of got their eye on. It's going to be a question of, finding out who they can close on and what it kind of comes down to, like who they're able to get to fill those other 2 spots if they do in fact want to take 2 more defensive backs. But I think Shawn Lee was one of the priority targets. Oh, they had 2 other guys visit with Lee last weekend, actually. And I think they'd like to land all of those guys. If they could, I think they would like to take those 3 that they had visiting last weekend in addition to Elijah Dotson, who, like I say, is already committed and took his official visit. He committed in the spring and he's taking his official visit this weekend. I'm just looking up the DBs from last week real quick because I'm drawing a blank, as I am wont to do. Cole Woodson, who's a corner, and whatchamacallit? Who's the other? Oh, Josh Gurrier, who's I think also a corner. I think, or he's more of a safety, I think. Whereas Woodson and Shawn Lee are more corners. So anyway, some good options out there. The staff, I think, has a good eye for talent when it comes to defensive backs, and we'll see what they're able to pull in for to fill out those last few spots. And one of those spots maybe could go to a guy this weekend. Mason Alexander is a 4-star cornerback prospect from Indiana. Kind of unique to see Pitt recruiting in that area. They don't typically recruit in Indiana, and given that it's a unique area, and they just happen to be going head-to-head with Purdue for this one. Mason Alexander took an official visit to Purdue earlier in June. It was his only other official visit prior to Pitt. Pitt looks like it'll be his final official visit of the month of June. And while he hasn't necessarily committed to anything as far as a commitment date, it wouldn't be shocking to imagine this coming down to those two schools. And those are two good schools for defensive backs. We saw it, and we learned a lot about it last year when Pitt was pursuing Coy Beasley, the safety who ended up going to Purdue. They felt very good about their chances with Beasley. Pitt was in very good shape with Beasley, and then he visited Purdue, and Purdue really made their case. And Purdue's head coach had a history of success, fresh off putting a first-round draft pick at corner. I think the highest cornerback ever drafted a year before, and so that was able to play pretty heavy on Purdue's recruitment of defensive backs, and it's why they were able to land Coy Beasley over Pitt, who can, it was like one of the few schools and coaches who can make a better case for their success at producing defensive backs than Pitt and Pat Narduzzi can. So they lost Beasley in that recruiting battle, and now it looks like they're heading toward a similar sort of battle with Purdue for Mason Alexander, the 4-star corner from Indiana. He's the headliner this weekend, at least in terms of star rankings for Pitt on the official visits. But as far as we know, and this is, I recorded this last night, Wednesday evening, as far as confirmed visits, we've just got 7 confirmed official visitors. Now, each of the last 2 weekends, there's been an extra visitor we didn't know about, and somebody that we weren't able to confirm or didn't know. In the case of Akram El-Nagmi, wasn't even on our radar at all heading into the official visit weekend. That still happens sometimes. So I can't rule out the possibility of there being an 8th visitor, a surprise visitor. But as far as what we've been able to confirm, there's 7 guys. Elijah Dotson, like we mentioned, the safety commit, is one of them. Mason Alexander, a 4-star defensive back, is another. And then there's 5 guys in addition to them. So another small group headlined by a Pitt commit and a 4-star corner, but another small official visit weekend. Some other guy, not sure what to make of that, to be honest. I think I don't know. I think you can make a case that they probably need to be casting a wider net. I think you can make a case that they need to be bringing in more guys for official visits. I think you can make a case that they're aiming a little too narrow right now. Only bringing in 7 guys this weekend after only bringing in 8 last weekend. They had 14 on the first visit weekend, but that's it. And that's not a lot. That's less than 30 official visitors over the course of the month of June. Maybe they'll get to 30 if they have a surprise visitor this weekend. But if it ends up being 29 over the month of June, I mean, for comparison, last year, for the first official visit weekend of the month, they brought in 24. And that was in one weekend. And we're looking at Pitt potentially bringing in 29 for the whole month. That's a real drop. And I don't know if it's intentional. I don't know if it's purposeful. I don't know if there's a reason behind it. But I don't know if I necessarily feel like it's the best course of action. I think you need to collect commitments, and a lot of them. And not have to just wait until December for official visits to fill out your class. You want to have the class largely filled, or at least a lot of the spots accounted for, by the end of the summer. And you might not get all of the commitments in the month of June, but if you're going to land commitments in July and August, it's probably going to be from guys who took their official visits in June. And if you only bring in 29 recruits, chances are you're not going to get 18, 19, 20 commitments out of it. I wouldn't think. I could be proven wrong, but I wouldn't think. We'll see. But as it stands right now, it's looking like a pretty small weekend. So who else is on this list that you need to be aware of? Torian Chester is an offensive tackle from Georgia. He's one to watch. Remember, we've kind of picked up over the last couple of weeks that the Pitt coaches want to take 4 offensive linemen in this class. 2 guards and 2 tackles. They've got a guard and they've got a tackle already, so they need one more of each, right? Well, Torian Chester is a tackle prospect from Georgia, taking his official visit here. By what we can tell, it's his first official visit. And it'll be interesting to see if he projects more as a tackle or a guard. But an offensive lineman, all the same, there's space for two more. Khalil Sterling, a wide receiver from Miami. As far as we can tell, he hasn't taken any other official visits yet. Going to do a little more digging on that to confirm for sure. But it looks like this will be his first official visit. That should bode well for Pitt's chances. And similarly with Denham Cook, a linebacker from Ohio, the Columbus area, who's coming in for an official visit. It doesn't really look like any of those three guys, Chester, Sterling, or Cook, have taken other official visits. So, with the dead period coming up, this is probably the final weekend for official visits for these guys. Probably the last chance they're going to get to take an official visit before the fall, which means if they were planning on making a commitment this summer, you would think Pitt's in pretty good shape with those three guys, a tackle, a linebacker, and a wide receiver. You move throughout, elsewhere. There's Saquon Smith, a running back from the state of Georgia. He's taken one other official visit. That was to Georgia Tech. I think Pitt's got a really good chance of landing Smith and filling a running back slot in their recruiting class. I know Tony Kinsler has a potential to play running back or be kind of a slot back or a speed back. I think he'll move around to a variety of positions. Saquon Smith might be a little bit more exclusive to running back, although I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of these guys move around into different spots, particularly these running backs were all sort of the same size and kind of speed guys. I wouldn't be surprised to see him move around into different roles and play different spots. But Saquon Smith could be the running back recruit in this class, with Tony Kinsler being more of an athlete, a versatile type of weapon. Mason Alexander, who we mentioned, and then Emmanuel Taylor, another wide receiver. He's from Virginia. He's taken one other official visit, and that was to Western Kentucky. What's unique about Emmanuel Taylor is he's a little bit bigger. He's 6'2" is what he's listed at in the Rivals database, which even if we assume that that's inflated, I think we assume that all heights and weights are, or at least all heights are inflated when you have self-reported info like that. It's self-reported data. And so if we assume that the 6'2" is inflated, he's still a couple inches taller than the guys who are listing themselves at 5'10" or 5'11", right? If they're inflating those, you've got a few inches built in that he's still bigger than those guys. So he's sort of the bigger recruiting or the bigger receiving target in this class, at least as far as guys who have emerged thus far, and certainly among guys who have taken official visits. He's the bigger one out of that group. And so that makes him notable. That makes him rather distinct. His size does. And he also, he's taken one official visit. It was Western Kentucky. So, again, I'm going to do a little more research into that. We're still putting together our official visit preview for later today on Panther-Lair.com, but that should be competition you could beat, right? You should be able to win those recruiting battles that if you want to get Emmanuel Taylor, you should be able to get Emmanuel Taylor. We'll see. We'll see what they're able to pull off. I think, when you look at the guys they've got coming in, when you look at the other visits that those guys are taking, have taken, or are not taking at all, you look at the offer sheets and things like that, I think it sets up for a number of opportunities for Pitt to close some commitments this weekend. Remember, they really only got one last weekend. It was Akram Anagmi, the offensive lineman from England. Shawn Lee may have committed over the weekend and just kept it quiet until yesterday. Either way, we can kind of count him, kind of not count him. I think there'll be 2 or 3 commitments out of this weekend, if not more. Just looking at this list of guys, I think they should be able to get a few of these guys that if they want them, they should be able to push for them and land the commitments if they're so inclined to do so. I think we'll get a sense of how much the staff wants some of these guys by which ones commit, if any commit, or how many commit, that kind of thing. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Obviously, throughout the weekend, we'll be watching to see what comes out of this official visit, the final official visit weekend of June. It starts today, runs through Saturday. We'll have coverage on Panther-Lair.com all throughout the weekend, tracking these guys down for post-visit interviews, checking with them about their commitments, and finding out who pulled the trigger, and seeing where this recruiting class stands heading into the final week of June as things move closer to that big, dead period of July, and then into training camp for the season. So final big visit weekend, final big recruiting weekend of the month Should be an interesting one, and make sure you stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com for all the news and info and the latest insight and intel, whatever we're picking up. We're going to put it down right there on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com is the website. YouTube channel, of course, is youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe, and you'll never miss any of our Pitt video content. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Get ready for a big official visit weekend by staying tuned to Panther-Lair.com. We got the mailbag tomorrow, so get your questions in, and we will answer as many as we can, and then it'll be the weekend. So here we are, folks. We made it almost to the end of the week. Enjoy your Thursday. We'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pitt mailbag right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.